Hello, I'm tigerslashII, and today I would like to talk about the Dark Eldar Wyches. As before, this is going to be broken into 3 parts. First, a review of the model itself, then a discussion on the unit's rules, and finally some tactics. The Witch model is one of my favorites, if not my #1 favorite in the entire Warhammer 40,000 line. It's incredibly customizable. I mean, all of these parts can be interchangeable with any other Dark Eldar parts, just like the warriors themselves. As you can see here, this one actually has a glaive, we'll focus, from a Hellion on it. And this is, in fact, the most recent one that I've done. The first model I ever painted was this one, and you can pretty much tell. Yeah. But I haven't repainted it. I keep it around for posterity. And I think it looks kind of funky. But yeah, this one, it's got a glaive from a Hellion, and it's got the arm of a Raider crew member, and all of these pieces are interchangeable with the warriors as well. The heads, the arms, the torsos, and legs. It makes the Witches incredibly versatile for kit bashing, not just with other Dark Eldars either. If you happen to have Harlequin bits, and every box of Harlequins always has a ton of bits left over, then you could easily turn a box of these Witches, which are relatively inexpensive. You know, you get just the glare there a bit. You get a box of 10 of these for about 30 bucks, and these guys, girls, come with a lot of extra bits as well. But you could easily turn a $30 box of Witches into a $40 box of clowns. Likewise, a lot of conversion options for Eldar Corsairs. Because the Corsairs, although they've been updated from what was it, 5th edition was their last edition? Although they've been updated, they haven't gotten any new models, and they are a very infantry-heavy army. And the only conversion option officially given is with the Guardians, the Guardian conversion. Speaking of which, you could also use them as, if you felt like it, Storm Guardians. Because no one really wants to pay more money for a conversion kit for worse Guardians. So you just run Witches as Storm Guardians, and it works pretty well. I've seen some people use these as Sisters of Battle counts as. I'm personally not a fan of that, just because, well, I'll probably review Sisters of Battle at a later time, but I'm just not a fan of using the Witches as Sisters of Battle myself. But if it works for you and you really want to play Sisters, and these are definitely readily available, so that is an option. Something else you might have noticed, I've got some square bases on here. These are Dark Elf Witch Elves, which I'm repurposing as my Blood Brides, the Elites option of the Witch. And these are actually quite expensive. They're 60 bucks for a box of the models from the Age of Sigmar line, but for a unique look to your Witches, I think it adds a lot. So as far as the models themselves go, I think they're absolutely fantastic. They look great on the battlefield, and they look great on the shelf. The only thing I will say is, if you'll notice, they are quite complicated. Their armor, because of the way it is, and because of the dynamic posing of the models, it makes it difficult to crank these out assembly line, which can be an issue if you're using these as your main troop choice. As you'll notice, their armor actually comes in 3 parts. You've got the skin layer at the bottom, then you've got the actual witch suit on top of that, and then the armor layer on top of that. This means that you're kind of always stepping over yourself and always correcting mistakes every step of the way. It's difficult to bang out a box of these in about an afternoon. I would say it would probably take all day. to properly get an army of witches painted up, or just a box of witches painted up, whereas if you were doing Kabbalite warriors and they were already assembled and primed, then yeah, like 4 hours is all you really need to get them to a tabletop standard. They're definitely not like Space Marines or Fire Warriors where you can just sit there and, 3 coats and it's done. If you want to do them any justice, that is. Now, getting back to that looking good on the shelf remark, let's talk about their tactics. Dark Eldar Wyches are awful. They're fucking terrible. It's been said that they're the worst troop choice in the game, and honestly, I would be hard-pressed to say otherwise. Their weapon skill and ballistic skill 4. They have a single attack each, toughness 3, strength 3. They come with a 6-up save, so they pretty much don't have an armor save. They do have plasma grenades. They have a splinter pistol, so poison shooting at 12 inches. They have high initiative, but outside of close combat, they're pretty much there to die. So what about in close combat? Well, with that initiative and 2 close combat weapons as well as grenades, you're looking at about 3 attacks on the charge at initiative, pretty much regardless of terrain. Also, you get a nice little durability boost with their special ability Dodge, which gives them a 4-up invul save in the fight subphase. The problem is that that's only in the fight subphase, so for Overwatch, you're left twisting in the wind, and that means with toughness 3, Overwatch can be a potentially deadly affair. It also means at toughness 3, they're going to be taking an absurd number of wounds. Their weapon skill 4 can outproduce the number of hits, and their high initiative might take the edge off a little bit, but strength 3 is going to cripple their wounding capabilities, and they have no AP, no poison, which I think, that's one thing I don't understand. Why they didn't give the Witchblades poison, I don't know. Now you can take witch weapons with them, which are pretty much useless. I mean, you're paying 5 points for the ability for one girl to re-roll to hit or to wound, or hit and wound rolls of a 1, which really you're going to want to take the Hydra Gauntlets, which are these things. You're going to want to take the Hydra Gauntlets because they allow you to re-roll to wound, which at strength 3 you're going to need that re-roll a lot. The Hecatrix can take Haywire grenades, and as you can see, you can take an Agonizer, and that adds a substantial amount of usability. She gets an extra attack, so 4 attacks on the charge with an Agonizer, poison 4 up, AP 3. It's not bad, but at that point, you're sinking 50 points into a Sergeant model with toughness 3 and a 6-up save outside of combat. That's not really that great. Now, the Hecatrix can take a Phantasm grenade launcher, which is pretty mediocre, all things considered. But I don't know about the meta where you play, but where I play, there is a lot of Tau and Necrons and a little bit of Eldar. Most of these don't come fearless. In fact, the #1 weakness of the Tau is their leadership. So having a model with a to wound capability of just hitting something with a blast at ballistic skill 4 and then forcing a leadership check, that can be kind of powerful. Now, it doesn't affect anyone that's fearless, and it doesn't affect anyone that has and they shall know no fear, meaning against Space Marines of any stripe or anything that's fearless like Chaos Demons, you're not going to really be doing anything. But it's something to consider. Also, the Hecatrix can take a blast pistol, but no. And as usual, they can take the dedicated transports. So yeah, tactics. What kind of tactics can you use for the worst troops choice in the game? Models that cost about twice what you would pay in points for something from another codex. If they were cheap to field, you could spam them, but spamming Kabbalite Warriors makes so much more sense because they can shoot 24 inches with poison shots and they cost fewer points. And these things are too expensive to tar pit as well. So, yeah. Here's the thing. Witches get significantly more powerful as the game progresses. They do have combat drugs, but their combat drugs table is entirely random every game, and only half the options on it are actually useful for you. Feel No Pain, Furious Charge, Fearless, Rage. All of these things help the witch units tremendously, if you can keep them alive long enough to benefit from them. If you wanted to increase their effectiveness on the tabletop, I would recommend sticking... Well, I wouldn't okay, you could stick a homunculus in with them. However, the homunculus model does not have fleet. So you're sacrificing an assault unit's fleet ability for a higher power from pain table spot. Whether or not you want to do that is entirely up to you. If you think it's a worthy trade-off, go right ahead. If not, then you still have some options. Keep in mind the homunculus is a fantastic HQ choice just on his own, and it allows you to bring a variety of war gear that the witches would otherwise not have any access to. It's just poison, rending, and instant death, as well as a webway portal. That's always useful. An Archon with an Agonizer and an Invul save might work, especially if you give it the Animus Animus Vitae. Because that would, if it actually gets a wound off, would boost the power from pain of everyone on the board, including witches. I guess that means you also don't necessarily have to stick the Archon in with the witches for it to work, but you know. The Invul save is a nice Overwatch tank, so you might want to leave them in there anyway. Alternatively, a Succubus with an Archite Glaive would give you some AP2 and a nice strength boost. If you have a lot of points to sink, and you don't want to go, and you want to go close combat, but pretty much at the expense of everything else, you could throw Uri and Raykarth in there with a unit of Rex or Grotesques inside of a Raider, and have him follow the witches around with his 12-inch bubble. If you have the Animus Vitae, you can increase your power from pain table by 2 turns. This means having Furious Charge on turn 2 and Rage on turn 4, 2 things which instantly skyrocket the witches from being utterly useless to pretty okay on the charge, but only on the charge. Once the initial combat is over, you better have a backup plan, hence the Rax and Grotesques. Witches are also well known for being absolute dog shit, just in general. The point is, even the worst unit in the game, if used effectively, can outperform the best unit used ineffectively. So as long as you're smart with how you use your witches, they're going to give you at least some results. However, you're going to always feel like you're shoehorning them in there, because frankly you are. As for other tactics, if you really wanted to use them as a tar pit, their optimal target should be something ludicrously overpowered. A Wraith Knight, a Night Titan, or a Dread Knight, these would be prime targets. Because they're toughness 3, pretty much anything decent at close combat is going to mulch them on 2s. And their 4-up invul save doesn't give a damn if it's being hit with AP dash or AP 1. Additionally, not a lot of these highly threatening units are going to have a weapon skill higher than 4, so you're automatically reducing the number of attacks you're going to get hit with simply by virtue of having a decent weapon skill. I personally wouldn't bring them along simply for this purpose, but if they find themselves in a situation where they can take advantage of any tar pitting abilities, those would be the targets I would go after. So yeah, those are witches. Some of the coolest looking models with some of the dumbest fucking rules. If they just had one more base attack, or poison weapons, or free witch weapons, or just the ability to choose which combat drugs they get, this unit would be so much more viable. In the end, while they're not competitive, with proper support, you know, some hand holding, they're usable in a friendly game, as long as you know what you're doing. Really, if this is sort of what I'm talking about. If you enjoy playing your army, if you enjoy playing with your models, then you can figure out a way to make them work. Witches without support are going to die a lot, but if you give them the proper support, if you build your list around making sure the witches get into close combat and do what they're supposed to do, then you're going to see results from them. It might not be the same results that you would get from a significantly better close combat unit, such as Incubi or Rax or Grotesques, but you're going to see some results. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a fun game with a list full of models that you want to play, and models that honestly look really freaking cool. And when you have the best looking models on the board, you've already won. Okay, so yeah, until next time.